this year's COP26 have never been more timely. At a time when Indigenous activists are demanding a greater stake in the decision-making process over areas that they've lived in for thousands of years, young people are no longer clinging on to the empty promises of politicians and are creating climate action themselves. At a time when environmental and ecological systems are being ruined by our sustained lack of tackling the climate crisis, now is the time for action.
Hello, welcome to episode 4 of Coastal Insights Season 3, a partnership between Raincoast Conservation and Take a Stand, Youth for Conservation. That was a little clip from one of today's guests, Augusta, Senesi, who's actually joining us from the UK today, which is super exciting, our first international guest we're having. But yeah, so like I said, today is episode 4 of Season 3, and this episode is about climate change, equity, and action. So my name is Makai Sharp. I'm currently streaming from unceded Comox territory. And today I'm being joined by my other co-host, Arian.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Coastal Insights. My name is Arian Tomar, and I am your other co-host, streaming from the unceded territory of the Chiana-Beecher Bay First Nation on southern so-called Vancouver Island. But we want to hear where the audience is coming from. We're seeing a couple of viewers popping up, so feel free to put it in the comments. Feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're casting from. We would love to know how far our reach is going.
Yeah. So while we keep the chat open for anyone to introduce themselves, I'm just going to introduce the episode. So like I said, this is episode 4 of Season 3. Hope, equity, and advocacy. And season 3 is all about, as the title suggests, hope, equity, and advocacy in a world changed by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so this episode is very central to this season's message: climate change, equity, and action. And so this little blurb that was actually this is put on Raincoast, but it was actually written by none other than Alison Kermode, which is the founder of Take a Stand, Youth for Conservation, which is one of this season's partners. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to her, and also to Asta Mail, which is the education coordinator for Raincoast, who also helped tremendously. Together, they both had supported us through this whole process and made this season possible. So just wanted to give a shout out to both of them. But yeah, so anyway, this episode essentially is about the impacts of climate change and how it's impacted people all over the world. Specifically climate instability, heat waves, droughts, wildfires, and flooding. The consequences for wildlife, ecosystems, and humans are detrimental, yet the various impacts of climate change are not felt evenly across our society. And it is clear that climate change disproportionately threatens the greatest risk to those who are the most vulnerable. And therefore, meaningful actions or solutions to adapt or become resilient to climate change and its innumerable downstream consequences must address this equity challenge. Today, Arian and I, along with our guests, will share our views on change using an intersectional and intergenerational lens, and explore how we can make communities more resilient and how social justice is connected to environmental justice, why it is critical and so important to have BIPOC representation within change spaces, and what equity and diversity looks like within the environmental movement. So I'm going to pass it back over to Arian to kind of introduce more about our partners.
Awesome. Thank you, Makai. So as Makai said earlier, this season is a partnership between Raincoast Conservation Foundation and Take a Stand, Youth for Conservation. Raincoast is a group of humans, researchers, scientists, and conservationists based on Wasanich territory who are doing incredible work confronting the problems facing the diverse ecosystems of so-called BC. Raincoast does this through investigating, informing, and inspiring. Makai, can you tell us a little bit more about Take a Stand?
Yes, and alongside of Raincoast is Take a Stand, an organization that myself and Arian are a part of. Take a Stand's goals are much like Raincoast in the principle of fostering an informed community. And I sound kind of like a broken record because I feel like I mention this every episode. But what I really like about Take a Stand is their main focus on motivating and empowering young people to protect the environment through being creative, through art and film, and youth-driven actions, which is super cool, combining science and art to advocate for the environment. So yeah, that's our guests. I'm going to pass it to Arian to introduce our first guest and start the episode.
Okay, thank you, Makai. Our first guest is Naisha Khan. Naisha is a 19-year-old second-generation Bangladeshi settler residing on Kwantlen, Katsi, and Semiamu territory. She has been a racial and climate justice organizer for around 3 years with the organizations Sustainabilities and Climate Strike Canada. She currently works at the David Suzuki Foundation and Banking on a Better Future, a youth organization devoted to pressuring RBC to divest from fossil fuels and organizes with Climate Justice UBC and Climate Recentered. Naisha is also a first-year student at UBC, and to find out more about her work, recent work, and her focus, you can visit bankingonabetterfuture.org, and you can also visit their Instagram page at the same name. So welcome, Naisha, and could you just tell us a little bit more about the work you do in a quick summary?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Naisha. Also use any pronouns. And I've been in this field for around 3 years now. And something that I take with me into all that I do within the climate field is making sure that everything I do is intersectional and has a justice lens. And so I kind of started within like the more mainstream environmental movement, but now I'm really focused more on climate justice and how justice is really inseparable when fighting the climate crisis.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Naisha. I can't wait to explore these topics more with you in our session. Makai, could you introduce our second guest?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce our second guest. So following Naisha is Augusta Senesi. And yes, so she is tuning in from the UK. Augusta is a British policy consultant and researcher working at the intersections of environmental displacement and Indigenous policy, seeking to use non-traditional research methods to influence the transformation of policy priorities. She founded and heads research at Walinda Lingo, which is an ethnographic research consultancy specializing in disparate and Indigenous communities across Africa and the Pacific. Fully commissioned, her team members are currently conducting field studies across West Africa in anticipation of their spring 2022 launch. Her studies with First Nations people across Australia, the Sahel, rural Southern African communities, African refugees trapped in the Mediterranean, genocide survivors, and the Maasai people of Tanzania has allowed her to consult with UN institutions, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the African Union, European agencies, and the Zambian Ministry for Youth, amongst others. Having written and spoken extensively about the importance of meaningful inclusion of, I'm butchering this word, I apologize, disparate, I don't know how to say it, my bad, narratives within global policy formation, and more recently in guaranteeing sustainable peace. She is a youth advisor for Plan International UK, the UK Department for International Development, and was a global ambassador for World Sustainable Development. Her journal articles on the potential uses of First Nation yarns in Australian environmental policy and European duplicity in global conflict and resource insecurity will be published later this year. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Augusta. Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, I'm guessing.
Yes.
It's so nice to be here. Yes. So as Makai so rightly said, my name is Augusta. I am an ethnographic researcher, so I'll get into a bit of what that is maybe later on. But I also work as a policy consultant, so I focus on Indigenous, displaced, and rural communities. These would kind of fall under the bracket of disparateness. So you were spot on, Makai.
Disparate.
You were spot on. And I work mainly across Africa and the Pacific. I actually just came back from South Africa. I was there for about 6 weeks, and then before that, the Sahel regions of West Africa, so Niger, Senegal, and the Gambia, working on water and resource insecurity. And I've been in that field for quite some time now.
That's so exciting. Thank you for being here with us today. I wanted to ask you really quickly, what time is it where you are?
It is, 1 second, 11 minutes past 9 in the evening.
11 minutes past 9. Okay, so you're like 8 hours ahead of where we are.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for tuning in and being so flexible to fit in with our Western time schedule. Now, Aryan, what do you want to do about our last guest?
There is a potential third surprise guest who might be able to make it. We're experiencing a bit of technical difficulties, but we'll introduce them if and when they are able to join the stream.
Yeah.
But until then, we can get started with Naisha and Augusta with our first question, which is, how did your work get started?
Yeah, I guess I can go first. I think my work got started kind of before I really knew what the word climate justice meant. It started with my family reusing plastic bags. It started with my family not wasting any food. It started with my family back home, like having fishermen deliver local fish to your door straight from the ocean. And so it started with this really deep understanding of sustainability, and then that kind of got very convoluted as I grew up in Canada. I was born here in this so-called nation, and that really conflicted with colonialism and that relationship. And so that's kind of how my work got started, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Augusta.
Thanks. Yeah, I would say that my journey was a bit more of a windy road. I think since I was a child, I've always really cared about injustice and inequities. So when I was younger, especially like when I was, I guess, my early teen years, I really worked on trying to get involved in like student councils, understand what things, like how systems are kind of created, and challenging things that seem to kind of disadvantagedly or negatively affect other groups of people. And then when I was 16, I started working with like genocide survivors and Holocaust survivors, just kind of seeing what were the kind of global systems that were created that created really unfair advantages for people from different perspectives, from marginalized groups and communities. And then when I was 19, I went to university. I did my first year of law. I did not finish law, by the way, I changed. But I spent a summer working in Zambia in a small village called Mwowo. And I was initially meant to go there and do some kind of international development and aid program. And I pretty much realized that a lot of the time when young people with no life experiences go into development programs, we don't actually add anything of value there. And I didn't want to be another kind of vacuous voice in the void, offering opinions from a really neocolonial Western perspective. I wanted to understand what life was like for these communities and these people. And so I spent those 3 months observing, asking questions, living in this tin thatched roof, connecting with the local headmen who are traditional leaders, the women, the children, the key stakeholders in that society, and writing a really comprehensive report about the ways that we could try and incorporate and include these realities and perspectives in kind of the kind of local and then global issues that were facing the community in Zambia. And it wasn't until I went back to university after a year off and changing my major that I realized that that form of research I engaged with is actually called ethnographic research. So ethnographic research is a form of anthropological kind of data collation. It's an observation of human stories and human realities. And the really cool thing about ethnographic research is that you use mixed methods. So you use traditional methods like interviews and surveys. But if a community doesn't speak through words, maybe they use dance and illustrations, they have drawings, maybe it's better to take a picture or a video. You can defer to those types of practices to collate data. And the idea is that we are kind of preserving stories, human stories, especially in communities where oral traditions, so spoken stories and spoken histories, are normalized. We are finding ways to preserve those stories. And that kind of became the center of what I wanted to do. I went to Australia. I was very lucky in the first year of my new degree to do a fellowship focusing on Indigenous culture ways and Indigenous rights in Australia. And Aboriginal cultures and Aboriginal people and First Nation people of Australia are some of the oldest preserved cultures in our history, yet they have little to no human rights protections. They're kind of really sacred areas and parts of their land are being constantly overexploited. There's a really intense focus on mining in Australia that damages those ecosystems. And I think sitting there and observing that reality in Australia made me think a lot about my parents and my African ancestry, and the fact that in a lot of African communities, we grow up with that sort of fear of Indigenous and traditional cultures. We kind of demonize those groups of people who have probably the strongest affinity and relationship with the land and environment that we need to help us in our climate crisis. And so I really wanted to kind of explore and learn more. And that's sort of how I ended up in my field.
Thank you so much for that. That was beautifully said. I wanted to ask you, how did you kind of land into a more broad region and demographics of people that you were working with? Because you said it started in Zambia, but then and also in Australia, but then you also mentioned like working in the Sahel and in the more broader Pacific. Was that just Australia, or were you like moving around to other different groups? How's that kind of process work for you?
That's a really good question. It all kind of, one thing kind of fed into the other thing. So when I came back from Australia, so during that time that I was in Australia, I was working a lot with the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth. And so I was meant to chair a science and innovation forum, but I was going to Australia. So instead, they had a call for papers on technology and child migration patterns. So I wrote about how we could use tech to better kind of log and track children that are at risk of being, trafficked during periods of conflict, so taken by people and sold into slavery. They really liked what I had to say, and so they invited me to join an international kind of consulting body that was reviewing member states' implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and 2030 Agenda. And so I spent about 6 months with a group of like 16 other incredible young people reviewing member state legislation and drafting a position paper, which is kind of outlining that we look at the Sustainable Development Goals as like 1, 2 different disparate, non-connected policy objectives, and actually they need to be looked at holistically, and that's how we're going to create better innovations.
Right.
That report ended up being shared not at the high level forum, but actually at the SDG Climate Summit in 2019, which, if you remember that summit, guys, that was a summit where Greta Thunberg stood up and said to world leaders, "How dare you?" Which I completely agree about their inaction when it came to climate action. And then later on that year, I ended up going and speaking at a forum. You saw a bit of the picture in the opening video in Luxembourg, and I was their youth panelist, and I was talking about sustainable finance, but from the perspective of indigenous, rural, and displaced people. Because I think the more you start to look into the inequities, so the imbalances of power in climate action or in climate justice, the more you realize that indigenous people, rural people, displaced people are some of the most left behind and also at risk of feeling the worst consequences of climate change. And so it didn't make sense to just focus on 1 or 2 areas. And I ended up at COP last year, and that was how I ended up getting the opportunity to connect with some people in the Sahel regions of Gambia. And so I went to do some projects with them over the last kind of couple of months, which is how I ended up in that field.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for answering that question. I think our third guest is here. All right, I will pass it off to you if you want to introduce him.
You got it. So, hey everyone, our surprise guest has arrived. Cedar George Parker is a land defender guided by the wisdom of his Tsleil-Waututh elders to fight for justice across many movements. Currently, Cedar is defending the land and water from the incredibly destructive Trans Mountain Pipeline. Cedar is a powerful activist who traverses intersectional boundaries to inspire action and mobilize youth. Give it up for Cedar. I'm going to add him to the stream.
Hello, Cedar.
Hey, how's it going?
How long do I have? What's up?
How long do I have to talk?
If you could just say a little bit more about your work, maybe a minute or 2 would be great.
All right, well, my name is Cedar George Parker. I'm from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation and Tulalip tribes. I'm Apache and Yaqui in me, so that's around Texas, Mexico, United States, and Canada. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and I'm really grateful. I grew up in Seattle, Washington. I love where I'm from. I love the water, and in Seattle we riot, we don't rally, and so I always grew up around people who just knew this stuff, and they acted like Indians. To be honest, they acted like natives. And a lot of my friends, I've never really experienced racism for being native until, except from cops and authority figures. And, I grew up in Everett, Washington, and on the res. And I always remember, it was really traumatizing for me to go to the elementary school. Very traumatizing, because our education system is, you're taught by people who love you and who care for you, in our longhouses, and our sun dances, and our ghost dances, and our fire ceremonies, and whatever it is all across North and South America. And the education is based off of love. And so when I went to elementary, I noticed is that you're being taught by people who don't love you. Don't get me wrong; it's still very valuable what we're learning, but it was very traumatizing. Oh wow, they don't love you. You're spending time with people all day who don't love you, in a system that don't love you, in a system that makes you like a robot. And we're taught to be functional in a dysfunctional society that we're always taught growing up to always come back. That's why I'm on the land right now. It's straight facts that the best ideas come from where I'm at right now, the best train of thought, and how we gang people together. And I started Sacred Trust and doing more of the legal work when it comes to the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We did a 1,200-page assessment document of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We did our own. You can't have these you can't have an institution like Canada that's very prone to genocide do it for us on our own lands. And so we worked with world-renowned scientists to come up with that, right? With our own assessment, based off of our natural law, based off of our law, the law of the land, right? Where I'm at right now, right? And it's Manath. It means rich but willing to share, not of monetary value, but of the heart too. And so the environmentalists know me for being environmentalist. My community builders know me for community building. My cultural friends and family know me for doing cultural. My mental health people know me for doing that, and I do all of that, right? I was in a high school shooting, and a lot of my friends died, and after that, Seattle went kind of crazy. A lot of people started dying. More guns, more violence. The rich were getting more rich, and the poor were getting more poor, and I can see that, especially after the recession. And so it's very important that in this fight, you have to roll on. You have to roll on and do whatever it takes and read as much as you can to create that change. Because my land's dying, my friends are dying, people are dying. My relatives in South America are dying doing these things. And those are just some of the places I've traveled all across North and South America, Europe, New Zealand, Australia, and did ceremony with our brothers and sisters out there and our family members and relatives out there. And it all comes down to one thing. It all comes down to love. It all really, really does come to one thing, love, because I'll sit there for days, either helping policy or working with Governor Inslee or Orca Task Force, or going out to Washington, D.C., or going out to Ottawa, to work with these people. And it's not just me. It's because I have a beautiful, great team behind me, and I have a good people behind me. And I even got one of my allies in here. What's up? And that's just how we reach out. It's because we reach out. We reach out. We just like policy work. You write it up, and if it doesn't go through, and they block it, you do the same damn thing, word it differently, and you push it through. And it's the same thing with life, and it's the same thing with this fight. But we continue to grow, and we continue to build, and we continue to bring people on. And so it's not just me. When I come up here and do all this work, I want to do a shout out to all my friends and family who I do this work with. And it's always more strong when you do it all together, man and woman, and our two-spirited people. When we go up and we move forward together, it's always more powerful when we do it that way. It is. And especially, what we do our meetings for our watch house, when we do meetings for our environment, it's here. It's here where we do our meetings. It's always here, because we need to attach our umbilical cord back to Mother Earth, because it's our mother. If we really say it's our mother, the elders will walk you through the land, and we do ceremonies. It's a system of working. It's a system of living, especially when you grow up in it. And so, people from the outside will always talk about it. And really, it's a beautiful life. It's a beautiful, beautiful life, and we're connected to our Mother Earth. And that's why I'm willing to die for my land. Not afraid to go up there. My grandma's not afraid when the guns come out, and we chain ourselves up to the oil tankers. When we chain ourselves up, my grandma's not afraid. My grandfather went through it. My dad went through it, and I'm not doing anything different. It's because of the reciprocal relationship that we have with the land that we'll do whatever it takes. And I understand the white man's ways. They like they really love their statistics and pieces of paper. And so I make sure I study. We study the effects. We study how it's going to affect the economics. We study how it's going to affect policy. We study how it's going to affect marine life. We study how it's going to affect the health and safety of people. 1 million people are going to get sick within 24 hours of a Trans Mountain spill in the lower mainland, which is 2.5 million people. That's why we have to stop it. It's going to directly affect the orca whales in the water. That's why we have to stop it. And even if there is no oil spill, their sonar of our orca whales are so accurate that they can tell the difference between different salmon. And it's a matriarchal society, and that's why the orca whales are so successful. Our people learn from the land. That's why our people are doing good. It's this positivity is like a sickness. It's like COVID. When I notice on the reservations or places, one person will get sober, it'll turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll turn the whole entire people. 100% because of the sickness of the beautiful, contagious ways of our lands. 100% consensus of our people said no. That we'll fight for against the Trans Mountain Pipeline in Canada. We're not afraid to die. Straight up, not afraid, because our little ones are worth it.
Wow. Thank you, Cedar, so much for just giving us a bit of an insight into your world and all the great work you do across these intersectional boundaries. And so I've got a question to open it up for anyone on the panel. We've touched on it a bit, but what about your work inspires you to keep going? Because at least for me, it's really hard to kind of combat climate anxiety and just like this paralyzing fear of not being able to make a change that sometimes it prevents us from doing what it takes to make a difference. And so, just want to hear people's thoughts on, how do you keep up that motivation to make a difference, and what about your work inspires you?
Also, quickly, just to add to that, like all three of you are doing such a vast amount of things. It's not just one central thing. How do you avoid exhaustion and stay energized and stay focused when your work is covering so many different avenues? So yeah. Anyway, I'll open it up for you guys.
Yeah, I guess I can go. Definitely want to say that I don't always avoid exhaustion. I definitely have faced really bad burnout. I think I'm still a little bit burnt out. But I think something that keeps me going is hope, and love and joy. A lot of systems of oppression are really strongly built on hate, hate for ourselves, hate for the other. And so by enacting acts of joy, by enacting love for ourselves and love for the other, we kind of are committing these acts of anti-oppression. I've been doing a lot of counseling lately because I have like some mental health issues and things like that. And I specifically have been talking to my counselor about how we need to take care of ourselves during this fight for justice, because I cannot give what I do not have. I cannot fight for a better world, fight for a world that values its people while not valuing myself. And so that's something that, although has been a very hard lesson to learn because of capitalism and hyperproductivity, at the end of the day, it is how we're going to make change. We can't hyperproductively organize out of late stage capitalism. It's not going to work. And so I think the way I keep joy and I keep myself going is I envision this better future for all of us, where we're loved and protected, where our liberation is guaranteed, where marginalized is no longer a word in our vocabularies. And I understand that I myself am part of that change. Yeah, and so it's not just like self-care. It's not about yourself. It's about care. And I think that is what gives me hope and keeps me going in this journey.
That was incredibly well said. I think you can speak for everyone in this call right now. That you need hope. You need a foundation where you yourself are supported before you can give, or you're gonna run out. So yeah, no, that was beautifully said. Does Cedar or Augusta, do you have anything you want to echo?
Sure. Well, can you ask the question again?
Yeah, so the question was, I'll just go back. What about your work inspires you? How do you stay energized and focused doing what you're doing?
Well, I look back home and I see the kids are dying. Kids are committing suicide. Kids are blasting each other just from the colors they wear on their head. Kids are suicidal. Those are children. And I always think about like my friend when we're looking at the Seattle lights. And one of my best friends, Toby, shout out to Toby. He's my day one, and he always kept it real with me, right? And that's the best thing you can ask for in somebody. Keep it real with yourself and everybody around you, but also in a loving way. and he died. I don't know if it was suicide or if it was overdose. I'm thinking it was overdose. And it's insanity. This it's normal. And so when I'm in this fight, you just have to roll on. To be honest, if you really want to create change, it's going to be hard. Look what's happening in the world. It's not going to be easy. No one said it's going to be easy. I never feel sometimes they say that activism is always a middle class type of thing, a rich and middle class type of thing. And so when I first started, I was treated really bad, and I'm okay with that because I'm not here. I'm not really, and I looked a lot more poor. I'm okay saying that. I'm okay, and I'm okay with that. People still don't treat me the best, and that's okay. I don't react to them. I don't put myself before the movement, and I have elders behind me. I have my people behind me, and I have tons of friends and family who support this movement, what we're doing right now. And we do vision quests for this fight. We fast 4 days and 4 nights just to make a decision on this fight, and that's where the hope is. Right? You can't lose your hope. They can take away your people. They can take away your land. You can lose a lot of friends. But one thing they can't kill is your hope. They have no weapon to kill our hope. They have no weapon. They can't. Stomach the hopes. They can't destroy the teachings of the land, the teachings of the people. They can't teach. They can't stop that. Of the hopes people of the water, people of the land, right? And so you have to move on. You gotta, and it'll be different for everybody. It'll be completely different, but you always have to bring it back to love and never put yourself before the movement. And that means you have to. The world would be a better place if we're all healthy. The world would be a better place if we're all healthy, and so you heal yourself, so you become medicine for the people and shine a light so bright you cannot be ignored. And so when you come into these things, I even tell people, that we're working here. I'm not here to make friends, but I make family. That's for sure. I'm here to do this job, and I'm not here to make friends. I'm going to be honest, because my people are dying and my land is dying. But I tell you one thing that does happen in this fight: you make family. You make family that you love, and you make family that you always come back to make this change in our communities and our people and our land. Because, like I said, if you really want the truth, my 5 friends were on the floor and they all got their heads shot at school. And right there, I said, I'm going to make a change. And they're 14 years old. They're just kids. And it really hurts when it's the kids that die. Grief is hard no matter what, but when they're 14, it's really hard. And so you really have to, there's really, really hard decisions that you have to make in your life, that when you see injustice, what are you going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? I don't blame the kid for shooting other people. I blame the society in which we live in. Look how many billions and trillions of dollars of subsidies go to the oil and gas sector. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that. It should be normalized, in a normal behavior. That should go towards social uplift programs for the people. And you know what? I just go out there and do it. People may know me from my environmental stuff, but I get paid to go talk to treatment centers. I get paid to go talk to indigenous youth. I'm Chicano too, Mexican born in America, in the United States. I talk to my Chicano children too. I talk to my indigenous youth all over, about mental health. And I went to these treatment centers. I went to these places. I went to PTSD treatment. And it's because we have a foundation of community. Because I was raised, my education system is based, my core education system is based off of people who love me, meaning elders saw me get raised like a tree. I was raised by these elders. I was raised by my people. I was raised in a community, and a real community where everybody knows each other. And we fight together. We do ceremony together. We do birthdays together. We hurt together, and we stand up together. And so that's why they can't stop us. And so it all comes down to love. It all comes down to love, and it's going to get hard. And I may say some hard things, but it's the truth in reality. Kids are getting blasted in Ukraine. Kids are getting blasted here. And so we and no matter how hard I think I have it, I know someone else has it even harder. I'm so lucky to live in Canada and the US. And even that, I feel horrible that I have a car, because I feel horrible that I have a house and food, because a lot of my friends and family don't. I feel like I have a lot of privilege, you know, and I do. And so, anyways, yeah, I'll stop there and say it all comes back down to love and creating that circle behind you. You know, bring yourself to places like this where your spirit can be free to talk. You know, bring yourself to places like this where it's freedom of the mind, freedom of the soul, freedom of the heart, and then the ideas start to come, right? You dig?
Well, I have a question for you, Cedar, because you mentioned partially growing up in Washington, but then a lot of your work is taking place in so-called BC. How has having to cross these borders and working within two different political systems in two different countries influenced how you approach the work that you're doing?
I think that I get to definitely see a wider spectrum.
Right.
I think I have a wider spectrum, you know, and I appreciate that. I get to learn from both countries. I get to learn a lot of the system and what works and what doesn't. You know, like being on the West Coast over here is pretty in a world that's messed up. I want to say progressive is kind of weird because it's kind of how things should be. You know, I just in Seattle, it's a lot of people are just like me. So when I moved out, activists use like these words, and I'm like, oh, what the heck? There's a word for that, and it's like it tripped me out, because it's just life, right? It trips me out because we just live it, and on the res too, we just kind of live it. Like, look it's beautiful out here. It doesn't matter though, both because I still live my natural law. It doesn't matter because I'm still gonna live Stomo. I'm still gonna live Tsleil-Waututh. I'm still gonna live Apache. So in the grand scheme, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I'm still gonna live Stomo, the Tsleil-Waututh, the Hopes, Yaqui, Apache. I'm still gonna live those things. I have we give our children Indian names. We have songs to communicate to our heart, to communicate to the land and the water. So in the grand schemes, it doesn't matter because I live the way of my ancestors. I try my hardest. You know, we live in places like this and we reach out. You know, it doesn't matter to me because it's not going to stop me from living this way. And if they do, I'm going to fight. Like my grandma, like my dad, my great-grandfather. I'm not nomadic. I'm going to be here. My dad is here. My grandma is here. My great-grandfather is here. My great-great-grandma is here. My grandma could name 13 generations back. So it doesn't matter. Thanks.
Augusta, were you going to say something?
Definitely. I just wanted to build off on what Cedar's saying, what Naisha so beautifully said. I think, firstly, Naisha, like, wow, because I completely get what you're saying. I think when I started becoming a lot more involved in looking at, I love being English. I thought I was the most patriotic thing. I would watch every royal wedding. I felt like I could not imagine being close to this concept of African. What's African? Like, that's not me. I'm British. And I think Erin and I talked about this a bit briefly about our names and about the significance of pronouncing our names the way that it was meant to be pronounced, right? And how when our parents have come to this country, or my parents, in my case, my parents came to the UK, it was one of assimilation. They were the kind of first wave or second wave of like migrants that were like, you don't speak any other language besides English at home. You only eat English food. We do not know anything else besides English. And I think when I first went to Africa for the first time and I felt this sense of like love and this sense of lineage and connection to a country, a history and a story that I didn't even know about, I wanted to know so much more. And so I think that the arguments and the kind of the points that Cedar so eloquently, so passionately said is so true. I think you start to feel that sense of like survival, that you have to fight to preserve this history, to reclaim something that was taken from you. If you look at the continent of Africa, I mean, colonization is still actively happening today in terms of government policy, in terms of this the shift towards kind of focusing on fossil fuels and poor energy sources. We import so much of the waste from the West in across the continent, and we're seeing a lot of climate kind of displacement and people losing their homes and their livelihoods. And we're actually seeing conflict being born from people losing their lands. And so kind of ingesting all of that and trying to process that, whilst I'm assuming, and I show in the same position, studying at university, I got plunged into what my friends and I called political depression, where the influx of negative news, of seeing the world kind of implode before our very eyes and not being able to fix that, it just made me sad. And so I had to go to therapy too, and it was really transformative and helpful because it made me realize that I don't have to give all of myself. And I think the issue that we have as people of color, as minorities, as people trying to fight to preserve our future and equity, as so-called activists, is that there's an expectation that we should give ourselves unreservedly to everything, whilst the systems of oppression, the people who benefit from our actions, our equity, our blood, our lives, in Cedar's case, just get to sit back and enjoy. And I think there has to be a greater kind of balance, of a greater share of that responsibility and that burden. And so actually I really refrain from considering myself an activist, because I don't think that I'm an activist. I think I'm just a human that wants parity and equality and equity. And I don't think that I should have a special title or term. We shouldn't just have panels on equity when we talk about climate change. It should be an integrated part of a conversation across the board. And I think that, I don't know, I think when we look at like even just going to COP and seeing, you know, all of these world leaders and all of these big, you know, banks and media agencies talking about the environment, but creating really inaccessible events for people. People are being priced out, activists from the global south, indigenous people are being priced out of the city. The people that really are central to everything, we're being priced out of the conversation because, again, it's about how can we capitalize off the environment. I mean, it's such a shame. And I think one thing that I realized, especially in my work, was that we need to have a place. Not only do we need to be strong activists and be ardent in learning, preserving those cultures and stories, we also need to be able to translate those stories and connect with the stakeholders, the people in positions of power that can actually meaningfully engage with us, but also create that change. And so it's not just enough to be outside of those conversations. We have to work within the system. And for me, I guess the way that I manage all of that and these diverging interests is spending like prescribed amount of time on the field, where I'll go to Africa or I'll go to wherever I can in the world, immerse myself in the cultures of those people and learn about their stories. And then I'll also spend time, like I am now in London, working with think tanks, working with organizations that can show me how the systems and these processes work, so that I can advocate perfectly. I can write papers that are being written about topics and people and realities that never ever get the audience or the oxygen of publicity or the publication. And I think, you know, if we're going to think about inspiring the next generation of leaders, and people are going to defer to traditional education like universities to learn about climate change and equities, we need to make sure that there's papers, there's writings, and there's stories and perspectives from the communities that understand what's at stake here. So that's, I guess, my very wordy way of kind of talking about and hopefully bringing together Naisha and Cedar's points.
Thank you, Augusta. I find like a common theme throughout, or I guess a thread through it. What all of you are saying is that you kind of need to have like a fundamental understanding of what is already in place to have a strategy to dismantle it or actually change it. And it doesn't necessarily mean from just direct political action, but more so becoming it to then adjust it and fix it from within the system itself. Arian, did you have another question lined up? I was going to ask you.
Yes. And also, we will have time for a Q&A at the end in about 10 minutes here. So feel free to hold on your questions and we'll get to them in a bit. But the question I had is particularly because, I think to really combat climate change and really make significant, progress for more than just one group of people, we need to think about the climate movement in more intersectional and intergenerational ways. And so I'm wondering, from your experience, like what role do youth play in the climate movement, and more generally, like what can these intergenerational movements learn from one another? What can I learn from the baby boomers? What can the baby boomers learn from me? And where should we kind of come in the middle to share our secrets of the trade to be able to live more sustainable and peaceful lives?
I can lead it off, I guess. I can start very quickly. I think the first thing I want to say and encourage any of the young people listening in the audience is that it's never been a greater and a better time to be a young person working within environmentalism, within activism, and within climate change and action. There are so many resources and support systems, funding available for us that was not really available when I was, I'm not that much older than you guys, but when I was, say, a teenager. And I think that if you look at stuff like, the United Nations have so many amazing youth advisory boards, youth fellowships, youth representative boards that are really helpful. Those are really good ways to also kind of get your kind of your feet stuck into the kind of bigger global conversations. But I also think social media is so key. Being able to put an audience and share those stories and those ideas across different communities. We're seeing people become overnight commentators in environmentalism, in international kind of news segments or debates and conversations just based off the traction that their social media channels are able to gain. So I think trying to use what is at your disposal. Not everyone has the economic means or the connections to travel to work in really high level and influential places. So looking at what's around you and seeing how you can meaningfully create coalitions, build partnerships with different people is also a really good way of doing that.
Yeah, I guess something that I would say is, I don't know, as a youth in the movement, there's definitely a lot of pressure put on young people. And so something that I just want to emphasize is that youth, of course, have such an important role in the movement, but you also have a role to take care of yourself. Not everything falls on you, and you're inheriting so much pain and trauma and burdens from previous generations that you really need to make sure to take care of yourself during this process. Like, I know 14 and 15-year-olds who are working and like going to high school and doing like 30 hours a week of activism and organizing. And as much as like our voice and our youth voice is essential to making it clear that this is our future and we need to fight for it, I also want to add that like when you are a youth in this movement, like find your community and find what makes you feel okay so that you can keep doing this work in a sustainable and manner that doesn't burn you out.
I don't think so. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just, yeah.
Love
it. This is how we are meetings, huh, Naisha? Yeah, that's my homegirl right there. I think first thing I think is like right here. There's two of us in here, right? Big con right here, me. Gotta raise my hands up, to our relative right there. And I remember walking in and started meeting with them, and I remember I said this. I said, "Man, thanks for having this front." Because I felt like this, for making the space really nice. Because I remember me and my friend were walking, and we're like, "Oh man, okay, we got to go up there. We got to be around an activist circle." And then usually, like I remember we're down in Texas at an AGM, Chase Bank AGM, and my boy was one of my other boys was saying, this has always been a middle class thing, environmentalism. And he's Chicano, and his parents are migrant workers, just like my grandmother. And we're like, yeah, huh? My grandma made pick the cotton and corn down in Texas because the conquistadors pushed us up because they're killed, and then that's the conquistadors came and raped and killed a lot of our people. And so a lot of our Aztec people kind of went throughout North America. But it's cool because we found each other as in Native people. And so I think of, remember when I came up and I said, man, I'm so happy that it's not all just white people here.
Yeah, I remember.
There's, and that's where the power's at. It's in it's in the diversity. And that's why we have the 4 directions in the medicine wheel. If you think of them as black, white, yellow, and red, and everything in between. And you notice the 4 corners come together and it's balanced. We need our people from the 4 corners, and it's even in our prophecies. It's we need to have our indigenous voices in the United Nations so we could bring that balance. And I remember I was there working directly with them, and where's our how come there's not a lot of North American indigenous people, even though we have a lot? And well, we're all fighting. I would be out there more. I would be at a lot of places more. But we're out here fighting. There's war in the streets, and then there's war on our land. And for the youth out there, the people are gonna tell you how to heal, how to be, and really it's experimental. It's really try everything you can. Just try all the healing. Try it all. Just try it all. Just try everything. Try everything. Everybody tried to tell me how to heal from the shooting, and that's even in our teachings. It's even in the teachings. We go for the walks in the bush. You go for a walk and find who you are. Pray, not don't even pray, meditate, whatever you do. Find who you are. What is your meaning? And most of all, what's your gift? I can't do what the other people on here do, and I'm okay with that. What is your gift? What is your gift in life? We have ceremonies on that. Naisha's gonna come to our ceremonies, and we're gonna pray on that. And that's the first thing I did making my group. Shout out to Wei Chun, shout out to Timothy and Lucy. That's our group. But what's cool is we're backed up by the elders, and they guide us with our mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally in this fight. And so the people I work with, we do ceremony. One of our my girlfriend got in a car accident, and my dad died a couple back in September. One of my dads, and I saw her get in the accident, and my dad got in an accident, and I got out of my car and ran in traffic, and I saw, and then she was okay, but still, we came in a ceremony to talk about this stuff. I said, no, we always start and end with the ceremony, and we prayed on their gifts, and then I even brought our elders and other people and mental health people, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally people, and experts on those things. And so those are the people that guide us in this fight as youth. And we bring in those experts too. Like we have our professors that we kick it with. We have our professors that back us up. We have our elders that back us up. We have our psychology people that back us up. But most of all, we come to Mother Earth. We come here. Because all the work I'm saying doesn't really matter unless I do it from here, and I do it from here. It really doesn't. I'm not going to change much, personally. And so what's your gift? Whatever you believe in, either be God, Creator, Allah, or even the universe, or even energy, or even stones. I've seen hippies believe in stones, and no, just kidding. And whatever it is you believe in, you have a gift. You have a gift. And it can be art. A lot of things I can't do. I'm okay with it. I'm not the most artistic person, but I see a lot of our people bring in art. I see a lot of our people in this fight. I've traveled and I've done ceremony with a lot of people around the world, and even pagans out in Europe, they out Indianed me, and it was beautiful to see that because I thought colonization wiped through Europe. There's still a little bit of people, and lift your gift up like the trees. Lift your gift up as tall as you can, like the trees here, and reach it out and share with people. Share with people your gift. And we have ceremonies for that. And so I sat there with my team and I prayed on what their gifts are. I'm not the most organized person. And so really, I'm going to say this just because it's youth. I believe so much that I manifest it through our ceremonies. I believe so much to stick up for our next generation because, sure, we might be the youth right now, but the ones who are not here in this world yet, who are coming, we're borrowing the world from them because they're the ones that are next. You know, we think 7 generations ahead and 7 generations behind. We start to create policy. Let's start to change our subsidies. Let's start to talk to people. Use your gifts and bring those people who don't have what you have to fill in those gaps, like those gaps between my fingers. To fill in those gaps, I have Wei Chun. You know, I have Wei Chun that's organized. And I always have him end our meetings in our longhouse. I always have him end our meetings in our ceremony. I have Lucy, who's artistic. And artistic doesn't mean just painting. She's artistic in how she applies her knowledge of standing up for the land and standing up for the people and the water and the air. She's artistic. And so some of the things I say I need to do, I have them. And then I have Timothy. He don't have much going on for him. And so no, I'm just playing. And then I have Timothy. And his energy is consistent. Meaning we can all be tired, but he will still be there, and I know that he can pack the group when we have to. And then my gift is that I know that I can get people on board, and I do the vision. And then so when all 4 of us fall, we have our elders pick us up. We have people that love us pick us up through this education process of becoming a better human being. It's about becoming a better human being, because right now we're borrowing the next generation's earth. They will inherit it after. You know, we're mad at the other generations. Imagine how mad they're going to be at us for not doing something. And I think of that. You know, I made a promise, you know, and so there's all these different levels of how we can create change. And the first one is just find somebody like you. I found, you know, my girlfriend, Lucy. We spoke 4 hours just on insurance work. You know, I'm talking to youth if I was going to. And so I really wanted to make this, you know, about spirit. You know, really wanted to make this about spirits. I'm talking to youth. And so we talked 3 hours on insurance work. And we started dating. And that's and that's the beauty part, is that, you know, it's like this, you know, you put a stick up and it falls, you know, but we start to ground ourselves and we put it in the earth, and then the wind might even push it. And that's what happens with trees. And that's why all these trees are together. It's harder to push down, you know, and then even if we fall, we have somebody to pick us up. We have somebody to push us back forward. And that's why you create that team. You create that team of people who love you. And that's why I say I'm not here to make friends, but I make family in this fight. I make family. I make family who love each other. You know, and then we bring in our experts, because, you know, I'm considered the expert on Trans Mountain, how it's going to affect orca whales.
Right.
I could talk, you know, and so one thing to get is, what is your gift? What is your gift? Gifted to you by Kankasha, HCM, the universe, Natsuma, One Heart, the universe. Whatever it is you believe in, you know, we're all in a universe. And what is that gift they gave you? And feed it. Feed it like you'd feed a dog. Feed it like you'd feed a baby. How do you raise a baby? Raise your gift that way. We give a child love and we say, you'll never disappoint me. Mm-hmm. I want you in my life. And so you raise yourself that way, and you raise your gift, and then you share it with the people. You share it with the people. You share it with the land. And you share it there, because we need our artists. Even if you're good with kids, we need our people good with kids. We need our people who are respectful. We need our people who won't stop. We need our people who are organized. We need our people who are even just loving. And we even need our people who go through hard times, because those are our teachers. Those are our medicine people. The one who goes through the hard times will share it. They'll get through it. They'll learn the lessons. So remember that whatever hard things you go through, it might be for a reason, because you might have a child or a baby might come to you going through the same thing, and you'll be able to be there with the answers and help them through that hard thing. I know I can help my little brother through the death of our dad, because I know grief. I've seen them dead. And I went through my healing I will forever be going through my healing process, but now it goes to post-traumatic growth. And so that's even medicine, you know, and I notice in Western culture, it's like, oh, it's bad to go through bad things. It's like, it's well, some of our biggest medicine people went through hard things, and they come back and share with the people the healing process. So share with the people your gift, even if it's trauma. Turn trauma into love. Find hope when hopeless, and find learning in disparity. And love yourself. Cry, especially you men out there. You gotta let it go.
Yes.
You gotta
I
let it
absolutely
go.
agree.
But even they teach our women not to cry too. They say every bad thing. So love yourself. Love yourself so much and heal yourself so you can become medicine for the people on the land. Heal yourself so you can help the little ones. Heal yourself so you can help our trees. Help yourself, and then read. And then consistently read. Consistently read. Read as much as you can. Read as much as you can. And don't be afraid to talk about your problems with a healthy person.
Well, I
Thank you
wanted
so
to
much,
ask,
Cedar.
in conclusion, what do Augusta and Naisha think about what Cedar just said?
Naisha, you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with everything that Cedar said. I really appreciate I think the sentiment of everyone is really valuable in this movement. It doesn't matter what form that looks like. Like someone I work with really closely, like they are not really directly involved with on the ground organizing, but they build websites for Indigenous frontline groups. There's so many different ways to be involved with this movement, and I think what is important is doing what is something that what is important is whatever you do that makes you feel valuable and is valuable. Yeah, that's really what I'd have to say. Augusta, you can go ahead.
Yeah, and I think just following up on what you said and what Cedar so eloquently said as well, I think I've just really learned like the importance of sharing. I think sometimes we get so driven by our purpose and our mission that we feel like the only person that can do it justice is us taking that lead. And I think when we go into movements and trying to preserve and fight against like our natural kind of Western capitalist normalized urges of always putting ourselves ahead of the other person, we actually lose a lot of incredible insights and learnings from others. And one of the things that I learned when I really started to focus on non-Western stories and the preservation of these realities is learning how to listen, learning how to respect the cultures and the histories and perspectives that don't always align with what I've been conditioned to think is the norm. And Naisha, I don't know if you would echo the sentiments, but I'm guessing, I'm assuming, you mentioned that your parents, you have like some kind of ancestry beyond Canada, I'm guessing, yeah. So you kind of get that constant balance, that battle as well between this norm that we're meant to kind of live in. In my case, it's this British norm with like this fight between African tradition and society, and trying to kind of like, and I've been so conditioned growing up to reject my Africanness. I think also part of growing in this movement is learning to embrace all parts of my identity. And I hope that we've not presented the argument or the suggestion during this talk that we have to reject Western communities or reject reject white people or non-people of color, because it's not about an us and them mentality. It's about us all coming together. And even if we know we have been, a lot of us are the byproduct of generations, of centuries of oppression, of discrimination, of negative conditioning of our realities, I think there's still definitely a role and a central role that we should all play in coming together and kind of righting wrongs together.
Yeah.
Thank you, Augusta. I definitely, just for the record, I don't think it came across at all to reject ideas of the West. I think we've been conditioned so much that even simply acknowledging where you come from can be like perceived as anti-West or anti. Yeah, I just I think it's great. I think it's productive, and I think it's necessary to recognize what makes us us and utilize that in the work that you do. So I just wanted to thank all three of you. I could literally speak to each of you for hours and hours and hours. I don't even think we scratched barely the surface, because I have so many more things I would want to ask you. But yeah, thank you all so much. I also just wanted to offer up the opportunity if there's anything you wanted to plug or shout out while you have a chance, like social media, websites, things that are coming up, etc. I just wanted to give you guys the floor one more time.
Oh shoot! I saw my Facebook up there. I don't even have Facebook. I don't even go on it.
Do you have
I
like
don't have
any other
social
social
media.
media, Cedar, where people can find you?
Shoot. Email.
Email.
For real, man. They kill people like us.
Yeah. Okay.
A
Well,
lot of friends and family in this fight have meant to go missing, and so I don't.
You don't find Cedar, Cedar finds you.
that's great.
My team has an email, but you could do this one. Don't lose your way 29@gmail.com.
All right. Oh, you wrote that so fast, Ariane. There we go.
Sorry, what?
Nothing. Thank you so much for providing that email address. If anyone wants to reach out to Cedar and his team, go here.
Naisha, Augusta, anything for you?
Yeah, I have Banking on a Better Future. Also, my personal, you can feel free to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Nashville. So it's like Nashville, but with an I. And then I also have kind of a project that I've been working on. It was briefly mentioned, Climate Recentered. I just put the spelling in the chat. And this is a project I'm really excited about, so definitely keep an eye on it. That's our website. Our website is climaterecentered.org. Yeah, there we go. This is so high tech. I love it.
I know, right? It's so cool.
Yeah, Augusta, you have anything to plug?
Yeah, well, we're kind of getting to a really exciting time with Walinda Lingo. That's the name of the organization. You can pretty much find us at Walinda Lingo everywhere. And if you type in Walinda Lingo, you can also find our LinkedIn. We are actually starting to shift beyond simply the reports and all of the data and traditional collations that we're working on. We're actually going to start making some calls for commissioners to help us film some documentaries. And we're going to be looking at how climate change, is affecting people in the global south. So that's going to be a really cool project. I really want to connect and like I think Cedar said, like Naisha said, like you brilliant chappies that are leading this discussion have said as well. I mean, your work is amazing, and we need to have more visual and non-academic, non-traditional ways of capturing the realities of climate change and marginalized people, and I really want to help that. So yes, that is something that we're looking to introduce with Walinda Lingo, and also internships, and they're all going to be paid because I believe in payment for your labor, people. So just keep an eye on that. Follow us where you can, and we'll start to share some of that with you guys soon.
Beautiful. Well, I will be emailing you about that. Yeah. I just wanted to reiterate once again, this was fantastic to have all three of you on. I feel like we had such a variety and spectrum of perspective, but it all came to such a central message that it left an impact on me. Arian, do you have anything?
Just that I think this is just the beginning of so many more conversations. And I hope for viewers that this sparks ideas for you to seek out people like Augusta, Naisha, and Cedar in your own communities who are doing this incredible work, so that you can also get involved and really, like Cedar said, use your gift to help change the world, because we need you. We need all of it, and we need to come together to be able to make a difference. So I think with that, thank you, Naisha, Augusta, and Cedar, who just dropped out, so much for your time. It's been an honor to have you on.
Oh, can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
My bad. Yeah, like I said, go to Sacred Trust, twnSacredTrust.ca to learn more. You know what I mean, and even how it affects orca whales around the world. This is we all live around the world, and just start to decolonize ourselves, and how do we do that, especially if our bloodline is so ingrained in it? Find those methods to really be Natsama, to be all my relations. Natsama means one heart, one mind, one prayer, and there's a word in all that all across the world too about that connection, right? That connection, because I feel sad for people who who've never get to experience what we experience in our ceremonies in our communities. I feel really, really sad for those people, who don't get to be educated by a whole entire longhouse or a community of people who love you and raise you in your gifts. Build that, bring back that substance, because to me that's more traumatic than a shooting, is growing up without spirit. But it's so normal in our society. We're taught to be functional in a dysfunctional society. We're taught to be right in a world that's wrong. And it hurts. It hurts when I see a lot of I live in Vancouver right now, and I think Seattle's starting to get it a little bit, and it hurts to see all of our people live that way. Because even though I talk about all this trauma, I think I know what would be more traumatic is me growing up without spirit. Because even through this trauma, we can change our perspective into a loving one, right? I understand the things that I went through, and it made me who I am today. And so, bring that spirit back into your bloodline, that connection to the land, because the world would be a better place if we all did ceremony, if we all had a system of living, of understanding our trees as our brothers and sisters, the grass like our brothers and sisters. When I speak, I don't want the people to hear me, to be honest. I want the trees to hear me. I want the grass to hear me again. I want the mountains and the water to hear me. And that might sound ridiculous, but it's called the Natsuma. And once we start to do these things, we start to feel more confident, and we surpass the trauma, and we turn into, growth, post-traumatic growth. And then we start to feel confident in who we are. Then we start to feel good. Then we start to make good decisions. Then we start to make good decisions for our family and our people. Then we start to meet good people, and we help those people. Then we start to uplift each other. Then we start to see that we're doing good, and we want to do good on the land. Then we start to connect to the land. We start to connect to the world. We start to connect to the universe. And it gives us the confidence we need to move forward. Because depression's a real thing. Suicide's a real thing. And in our ways, we have the antidotes to that. I love my life and what I went through, even if it was in poverty, even if there were shootings, even if it was in the hood, or people want to call it projects or whatever. I still love my life, and I love where I grew up, and I love my life. And so because I had spirit, because we always had a spiritual foundation and an interpersonal relationship with the land, that's where it's at.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cedar.
Yeah.
I really appreciate all that you've contributed to our discussion today. And I hope people will be able to check out twnSacredTrust.ca.
All right. Yep.
To also reach out at don'tloseyourway29@gmail.com.
Hell yeah.
But now, Makai and I are going to wrap up the episode. But thank you all once again to our guests.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Makai. What do we have?
That was like, yes.
Yes.
Wow. Yes,
I'll just
briefly once again, thank you so much to our three guests and everyone who was watching today. We are kind of over time, so I'll just kind of make this quick. But next episode, which is episode 5 of season 3, is all about Indigenous stewardship. I don't know if I should go into detail. If you want to learn more about this episode, you can go to Raincoast Conservation. I believe it is .ca. Let me just confirm that with you. Raincoast.org, my bad. www.raincoast.org, and you can find out about Coastal Insights Season 3, and you can read a little bit more about this bio for next week's episode. But I'm going to pass it on to Aryan to talk about the Student Innovation Challenge before we wrap up.
Sure. Thank you, Makai. So just quick, the Student Innovation Contest is coming up. The deadline to submit is May 27th, and we're just looking to show Raincoast Conservation Foundation in partnership with Take a Stand. Just looking to showcase the many inspiring youth-led projects that promote education, stewardship, and conservation of the local wildlife, habitats, and Indigenous cultures of coastal British Columbia and the transboundary Pacific Northwest. This project can look in a variety of ways. You can check out more information at raincoast.org /innovation challenge. this is for students grades 3 through 12, and there are plenty of prizes that just keep coming in every day, ranging from stand-up paddle boards to prize packages from Helly Hansen, Patagonia, and Ecologist, as well as adventure experiences with Wild Play. So thank you again to all of our watchers and all of our guests.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone who tuned in this episode, and we will see you next week.
All right. Bye,
Peace out.
everyone.
Have a good day. Bye.